Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're going to be taking a deep dive into Squash the Gaming Monster.
Oh,
It's this guy that you guys have asked us to look into and break down for you, and it's all about video game addiction.
okay.
It offers help for people who might be struggling with it,
Mm-hmm.
or even for folks who are maybe just worried about someone that they know,
Mm-hmm.
someone they care about,
Right.
maybe like a family member.
Right.
And one of the things that really caught my eye when I was looking through this guide was the comparison between video game addiction and substance addiction.
Yeah. That's
I thought that was super interesting. It's like, is it really the same?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's one of the things that the guide really highlights is saying that both of them are tapping into the same reward systems in our brains.
Oh, okay.
So it's not just about enjoying something a lot.
Okay.
It's like how our brains are wired and how that wiring gets involved in these things.
So it's like both are kind of hijacking those pleasure centers in your brain
Mm-hmm.
and making you crave more and more of whatever it is,
Yeah.
whether it's the game or the drug.
Yeah.
But wouldn't that make it harder to quit? Just like it is with drugs.
Exactly. And the guide really hammers home that this is serious.
Oh, wow.
It's a serious issue, especially when it comes to, those MMORPGs.
MMORPGs.
Massively multiplayer online role-playing games. So think of games like World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy XIV.
Okay, got it.
These games are designed to really draw you in.
Okay.
It's like you're immersed in these huge, complex worlds, and there's all this social interaction,
Yeah.
and you're constantly getting rewarded for doing things in the game.
Yeah, okay, I get the immersive part, but why are MMORPGs specifically called out in the guide? I mean, are they really that different from other games?
They are, yeah. And they're different in a few really important ways.
Okay,
So unlike a typical game that you might finish and be done with it,
right.
MMORPGs, they never end. There's always something new that you can do. There's always a new goal to reach, or a new item to get, or a new quest to go on with your friends.
Yeah.
With your online friends. And so it just becomes this cycle that's really hard to break free from.
So it's like the game never really ends.
Ugh.
And that just keeps you hooked because you always feel like you're achieving something.
Exactly.
Right.
And this is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Have you noticed any of the warning signs that they mention in the guide, either in yourself or in someone you know? Think about if you're spending more and more time gaming,
Okay.
are you maybe neglecting some of your responsibilities, or are you finding it hard to focus on anything else?
That's kind of scary.
Yeah.
It's scary to think that something that seems so harmless, just playing a game could have that big of an impact on your life.
Yeah, it is. And it's just a reminder that anything that really affects our brain's reward system
Right.
can become addictive. It doesn't matter if it's a substance or just a behavior. And that's why understanding the psychology behind it is so crucial.
Yeah.
It's so important.
Okay, so we've talked about the problem, but the guide doesn't just leave you hanging, does it?
Right.
There are solutions. It even offers a path to recovery. And one of the things that I thought was really interesting was this concept of executive control.
Yes.
What is that all about?
So the guide suggests that if you can work on strengthening your executive control, that can be a really powerful way to help you with your addiction.
Okay.
I think of executive control as a muscle in your brain
Okay.
that helps you make those good decisions and resist those impulses.
It was like that little voice in your head that's saying, maybe I should do something else right now instead of playing that game.
Exactly.
But how do you actually strengthen that muscle? How do you make that voice louder?
Well, that's where the guide's practical advice comes in.
Okay.
So they recommend doing activities that challenge your working memory.
Working memory.
Yeah, it's that part of your brain that helps you hold information
Okay.
and juggle tasks.
So instead of just passively taking in content from a screen or whatever, you're actively engaging your mind.
Yeah, exactly.
So what kind of activities are we talking about here? What does the guide suggest?
Oh, they have a bunch of great examples. So things like learning a new language, or taking up a musical instrument,
Oh,
or even just trying a new recipe.
okay.
All of these require you to focus and concentrate, and you have to hold multiple pieces of information in your mind at once.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like giving your brain a workout.
Yeah.
You're training it to resist those temptations, those distractions. It's not just about willpower.
Right.
It's about building up that mental strength.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah,
It's like you're actually training your brain to be stronger.
exactly.
And the guide also mentions that it's not just about solo activities either.
Right.
Like social connection is a really big part of recovery as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
It's about replacing that time that you spend kind of isolated in that virtual world with real-life interactions.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But that kind of brings up something I was wondering about. You mentioned earlier that MMORPGs are considered to be social.
Right. Yeah.
So how does the guide reconcile that with this whole need for real-world connection? Like, is that kind of contradictory?
It's a great question, and it's something the guide actually addresses directly.
Okay.
So it acknowledges that online games can offer people a sense of community,
Yeah.
especially for people who might have trouble with social anxiety in real life.
Right.
But they argue that these online interactions are often kind of superficial,
Okay.
and they can't really replace those deeper and more complex relationships that you get from face-to-face interaction.
So it's not about like cutting off your online friends completely.
No.
It's more about finding a balance and making sure that you're prioritizing those real-world connections.
Exactly. And it's about recognizing that while online interactions can be enjoyable and even fulfilling to a certain extent,
Right.
they shouldn't come at the cost of your real-world relationships.
Yeah, that's a good point. The guide also talks about support systems, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like having people around you who understand and who can offer help.
Definitely. And that support, it goes beyond just your friends and family.
Okay.
The guide actually recommends seeking out professional help if you need it,
Oh, okay.
whether that's therapy, support groups, or even medication in some cases.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It reminds us that there's no shame in asking for help
Yeah.
and that there are resources out there.
Yeah.
But even with all this support, I can imagine that recovery is still a pretty tough journey.
It is. It is. And the guide makes it clear that it's not a quick fix.
Right.
It's an ongoing process that takes commitment and effort.
Yeah.
And you know there are going to be setbacks. There are going to be challenges along the way.
Of course, yeah.
But it's important to remember that every step forward is a victory.
Yeah, even small victories can add up to big changes in the long run, right? I was really struck by how much the guide emphasizes finding new interests and hobbies.
Yeah.
It's like replacing that void that's left by gaming with something positive and something engaging.
Yep.
It's like hitting that reset button on your brain, right?
Exactly.
Finding new ways to experience joy and fulfillment outside of the game. But it's not just about filling the void, is it?
No, you're right.
It's also about personal growth.
Exactly, yeah. It's about rediscovering who you are outside of the game and exploring new passions and developing new skills. You know, it's about creating a life that's rich and meaningful, both online and offline.
Yeah, and that kind of brings us back to the core message of the guide, right?
Mm-hmm.
That recovery is totally possible.
Yes.
And there's a fulfilling life waiting for you out there.
Absolutely.
Beyond the screen.
Yeah. Squash the gaming monster. It's like they're offering a roadmap.
Okay.
Not just for overcoming addiction, but for building a better life.
Mm-hmm.
It's about taking control, making positive changes, and reaching out for support when you need it.
So what does this all mean for you, our listener? What's like the key takeaway from all of this?
Well, if you're out there and you're struggling with video game addiction, or you know someone who is,
Right.
it's important to know that you're not alone.
Yeah.
And this guide, it really does give you practical steps and insights that can really help.
Okay.
And it reminds us that addiction, it's not a character flaw.
Mm-hmm.
It's a challenge that we can overcome
Right.
with the right tools and the right support.
And just remember recognizing the problem. That's always the first step towards solving it. So don't be afraid to reach out for help.
Absolutely.
Whether it's a friend, family member, or even a professional.
You know, the guide also asks us to think about the bigger picture. Like, how can we as a society create a culture that promotes healthier gaming habits?
That's a good point.
And how can we educate young people about the potential risks of excessive gaming?
Yeah, that's a really important question.
Yeah.
It's not about saying that video games are bad.
Or that we should get rid of them.
Of course not.
It's more about promoting balance and awareness.
Exactly. Video games, they can be awesome.
Yeah.
They're fun. They can help you connect with people. They can even help you, think better. But like anything else, moderation is key.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
Really unpacking the insights from Squash the Gaming Monster. We talked about the science behind addiction, the allure of those MMORPGs, the power of executive control, the importance of support systems. Yeah. But there's one question that the guide didn't really get into that I think is worth thinking about. What role can technology itself play in addressing this?
Ooh, Interesting.
Could game developers actually design their games in a way that encourages healthier habits?
That is a fascinating question.
Yeah, could we take the thing that's potentially problematic
Right.
and turn it into something good?
Yeah, that's a great point. It's definitely something to consider as we continue to explore this whole world of gaming and technology.
It's a conversation that's just getting started, really, and it's a conversation that we all have a role to play in.
Absolutely. So as you continue your own deep dive into all this stuff,
Hmm.
remember the key message from Squash the Gaming Monster. Video game addiction is a real issue, but it's not a life sentence. With awareness, action, and support, you can regain control and create a life that's truly fulfilling.